Hello and welcome to a Monday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. It is El Dia Despues with Lucas Navarrete. Although now we are, I think, no, we played yesterday,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So it's unbelievable. I'm not getting anything right these days on the intro, and I keep on forgetting it's a blur. So yeah, we played yesterday, and as usual, Lucas and I are here for like a month now. We've been doing this El Dia Despues thing on Mondays where we kind of review about lingering thoughts after the game. Of course, we do the post-game podcast, but in addition to that, there's always just fresh perspectives the next day, I find, so it's always nice because we have the Thursday schedule after the midweek games, and then we have the Monday schedule after the La Liga games. So, Lucas, how you doing, man? How are you holding up there in Valencia?
Still very hot. I'm doing fine, but it's still very hot. Hopefully, I think we're catching up some serious rain this week. It seems that it's going to be raining for the full week. Also in Madrid, mind you, since you're going to be there. So it seems that rain season is coming to Spain, and well, looking forward to getting rid of some of this hot.
Without fail, Lucas, I am single-handedly responsible for weather change in Spain. Every time I'm there, for whatever reason, it's an anomaly of the year where Canada's hotter, and it was 30 degrees here yesterday, and I'm going to Spain, and it's going to be raining. So this is my contribution to cooling you down.
I think this is actually the first that you're bringing with you the first quote-unquote hurricane to Spain. I think they downgraded the hurricane itself to, I don't know, to a tropical storm or whatever, one of those categories. But it was a hurricane before, and everybody was very worried about, the first hurricane hitting Spain in history. So.
Oh God! Wow.
Yeah. It's been downgraded to a tropical storm, and I think the worst is going to hit, obviously, the Galicia coast and all that. So it's only going to be raining in Madrid and here and basically in Galicia also. But, everyone was worried, yeah.
All right, well, let's hope for just rain, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, we're going to talk about football and what happened yesterday and maybe some things that happened this morning. So what were your thoughts, your biggest takeaways from last night, or I guess, yesterday afternoon? It was an earlier game. So what were your thoughts?
My main takeaway, as you ask, is that I think Rodrigo pretty much ran away with the spot as Benzema's replacement as a false nine. I think Rodrigo changed the course of the game by himself in just 15-20 minutes. He got there. Hazard wasn't all that brilliant. I thought Hazard was, as most fans, I thought he was decent against Celtic. But I expected a little bit more from him last night, and well, not last night. It was yesterday anyway, but I thought Rodrigo ran away with a spot as Benzema's replacement for sure. I thought he changed the course of the game, improved himself as the most obvious and likely candidate to replace Benzema from now on whenever Ancelotti needs a player to take that role.
Confirm what we had said all summer. If we're not signing anyone, Rodrigo back up left wing, Rodrigo back up striker, and Rodrigo back up right wing or right wing starter. He's basically the multifunctional person who you put in attack as your next best available player after Benzema and Vinicius. That's clear to me now. And there was a lot of noise after the Celtic game, which I didn't want to pour cold water on because I think the fan base has the right to be excited if Hazard does something well. But I wanted to also just be realistic about it. And I don't know if it was you and I that talked about it, or if it was with you and after the Celtic game, but it's a really weird thing to say. But Hazard contributed to 3 goals against Celtic, right?
Yeah.
He had a goal and assist, and then obviously the pre-assist too. I think it was the first goal, and so he didn't do anything outside of that. That's a really harsh thing to say. I understand. But
it's fair though.
Yeah, I often have said that about Vinicius in the past, where it's like he's not having a great game. Maybe he forces the dribble and stuff, but he's always involved in contributing to goals and assists, and that's all you can ask for a star. And I think, just to call out my own double standard with Hazard, I think the difference is that, Vinicius does this almost every game. Vinicius can have bad games regularly, and I don't mean bad in the sense that he's just having a bad performance. I just mean maybe there's not every play is effective. Maybe some of his dribbles don't get pulled off. Maybe some of his showboating sometimes backfires. Maybe he loses some balls, but he's still consistently there when you need him. in one or two moments, but he's been consistently there in one or two moments for like a year now straight. And that's the difference. Like, I just don't know if I trust Hazard to also have that. And I'm not saying Hazard was bad in that Celtic game outside of those three moments, but he wasn't that noteworthy. He lost his first couple possessions on the ball. He actually lost the ball. He forced it a little bit. So I just think it's clear, man. Rodrygo is the guy right now that you asked to fill those roles. He was fantastic, and he's been good for a while.
Yeah, the bad thing about it is that if Rodrigo is asked to be this first replacement or first attacker of the bench whenever someone is needed, you're obviously forced to play Valverde on the right wing, which I'm not too thrilled about, even though obviously he was great. He's been pretty good the whole season in that spot, but I thought, as we've talked many times, I think that Valverde is more useful as a central midfielder. But anyway, I thought that's the only bad thing about Rodrigo having this kind of role right now is that you probably wanted to have Rodrigo this role with another pure attacker playing on the right, with Rodrigo then being the true first backup of the bench for both Vinicius, Benzema, and then the other guy on the right wing and not Valverde. That's the only bad thing about the situation, but we'll just have to get used to it, because when Benzema is not available, I'm fairly sure that Rodrigo is going to play on the center, and then Valverde will play on the right, no question.
Well, what was interesting about yesterday was that on paper, Rodrigo started on the right wing and Fede was in midfield. Mm-hmm. And actually, that was a good showing for our agenda that Fede is a better midfielder than a right winger, because he could do all of those things that he does on the right wing from the central midfield position. In addition to that, he can also play in midfield and also do things defensively. Like that bad foul, or I don't even know if he was actually fouled or not, but Mallorca's goal where Fede fouls Maffeo, I understand maybe there was not a touch, so it wasn't an actual foul. I think Matt mentioned that in the podcast yesterday, although I haven't really seen it, to be honest. But besides the point, Fede sprinted from like the opposite side of the field and went all the way over to that side and fouled Maffeo. And it was the effort that impressed me more so, like the foul or the not foul or whatever. That was my main takeaway. And I think if he plays in a deeper role, he can do that more often and help, especially in games where, like, Casemiro's gone and Tchouaméni's not on the field. Because Jose mentioned this on Twitter, that now we're going from who's Casemiro's backup to who's Tchouaméni's backup. We still only have one pure defensive midfielder in the squad. So having Fede in that deeper role would make sense in that situation. But he can still, he did all those things that a right winger can do from that position still. And I think that's what and without sacrificing that third attacker. Maybe you can't do that every game. Maybe there are some games where you really want him as like a fourth pseudo midfielder / right winger. But then games like this where you have a team that's not even threatening you on the other end of the field, and you need more of the ball, you need more creators, and you need more chances, then it makes sense. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's crucial in this context. Is crucial in this particular topic. I think that Valverde will be very useful on the right wing or as another midfielder, as you mentioned, against more physical teams, against teams that Real Madrid require a more defensive approach to win, but definitely not at home against Mallorca. So it's clear, and Ancelotti seems to be thinking the same, since he started him on the midfield and gave Rodrigo the chance to start on the right. So it's quite clear to me that the context matters a lot in this situation, and Valverde should not play on the right wing against 85% of the teams Real Madrid are facing.
I'd like to ask you a question. I ask this question every live podcast that we do around the world, that I always wish you were there with me. But we in different cities, I always ask, if it came down to having to play one of these two, would you rather play Hazard or Asensio? And I feel like every city feels differently. In one city will put all their hands up for Asensio, the other city will put up hands for Hazard, and it's really interesting. And I'm just curious, what would you do?
I would probably play Hazard ahead of Asensio, even though Asensio might actually be a better footballer at this point. I think that Hazard has shown a little bit more interest and more engagement for playing those kinds of minutes than Asensio. I'm quite disappointed with Asensio's gesture the other day when Ancelotti told him to get back to the bench after warming up on the sidelines. I was a bit disappointed with that, seeing that, mainly because maybe something happened behind the scenes that we don't know, but it seems to me that he was willing to stay in the club and get the signing bonus next year. So it seems to me that he kind of embraced this situation he's seen in this moment. I get the frustration, and Ancelotti seems to be getting it too, but I'm not a fan of it. So just because of an attitude and for pure, I just think that Hazard deserves it a little bit more than Asensio at this point. And basically, I wouldn't invest my minutes on Asensio, who is going to leave next summer, no matter what. I would probably rather see Hazard, since the debate is so close between them two. I would rather see Hazard playing those minutes and maybe potentially gaining or increasing his value a little bit.
So that's interesting. I know with Hazard, with all the frustration we have with him, he's never caused problems like that. You know what I mean? Like he's
Correct.
never. I don't think we would see him kick a water bottle if he got called back to the bench. Everyone in the locker room loves him, right? So there's that side of it. Everything else is unfortunate that he hasn't been as good as advertised. He's been injured, all that stuff. He's, to be fair, without more professionalism, I don't think he's come back in shape every year his whole career, which I think has taken a toll now. That should be discussed. But the thing with Asensio too is the difference between them is that for whatever reason, I think part of it is because maybe no team really wanted either of them, if you ask me. Hazard wanted to stay and fight. And obviously, like, to be clear, he is a Madridista. I mean, he's been wanting to join here since his Chelsea days, the whole time. So he's arrived and he wants to stay and he wants to fight and he wants to prove himself. And Asensio all summer was kind of in and out of the conversation. Like, he wants to go. Obviously, his new agent, we know who he is, and wanting to get a new contract, not necessarily being fully bought in. I think that has to have factored in to Ancelotti when he's deciding the pecking order for this stuff. And obviously, absolutely, Hazard also prototypically fits the false nine role, and obviously he had a good game against Celtics. So that is understandable. All this is understandable to me. Asensio also, my assessment of the situation is that he would have left if that option was there. He would have been gone. If a team who was a really good team came along and gave him the money he wanted and the playing time he wanted, I think he would have left. So the fact that he stays and we go and say, oh, look, he stayed. He wants to stay. I don't think it was the case like that. I think it was, no, he stayed because there were no other options on the table. And he's also stayed knowing the situation, knowing Ancelotti was not going to play him ahead of these other players. And he stayed. And so he can't also be surprised about this, is my point, Lucas.
I still think that he'll get some minutes this season. And I mean important and important and relevant might be a bit of an overstatement, but that he'll play some minutes here and there. I think that Real Madrid will find themselves in a situation where Asensio can be useful off the bench, can provide a bit of a scoring punch off the bench when, I don't know, maybe Rodrygo isn't available, Benzema isn't available at the same time. I think Asensio might actually be called upon. But obviously, you have to wonder his commitment if you're seeing the things you're seeing today. So it's a difficult case. I think Asensio should be working hard to win these minutes I'm talking about. And right now, with these gestures and with this attitude he had yesterday, I think that he's not helping his case for sure.
But you got to say, like, if I'm in that position, I can't say I wouldn't kick a water bottle. Like, I would like to say I'm this perfect boy who would, I feel, I know what it's like to be frustrated when playing sports. I definitely am not like the same person I am sitting here doing work and talking to you. Like, there's definitely a part of me that was like, I'd probably kick a water bottle at some point in my career. So I guess I understand the human side of this, to be honest. So I don't want to blame him necessarily for that. And you saw Ancelotti's quotes where he said, I agree with him for being angry. I'd be angry too.
I think he wanted to be caught on camera. I think that he wanted this to be a thing. Otherwise you can express your frustration in some other ways when the cameras aren't looking, when you are not in front of everybody. So I think that it was a little bit staged and from his side. Not that he didn't feel the frustration, obviously, but that he wanted everyone to know that he's frustrated, if that makes sense.
Do you think the gesture puts pressure on Ancelotti to play him more?
It definitely shouldn't. I don't think it should. I don't think Asensio has shown enough when given the chance to put pressure on Ancelotti, and basically Ancelotti right now is getting the job done with the men he's choosing every single week. So I don't think it's the case. I don't think Ancelotti should be feeling any kind of pressure from the fans or the club or even Asensio himself, given the circumstances. Again, given how poor or how disengaged Asensio has been lately.
There are definitely, and I think it was Matt who brought up this point that last year, Mallorca is a hometown thing for Asensio, right? So maybe he even had family members in attendance, I don't know, visiting, whatever. But last year, it was Mallorca, he scored the hat-trick, right? So maybe he also felt like this is my chance to also, this is a team I can do damage against. I also just want to say, Mallorca, the way they played obviously is much different than the way Celtic played, right? And I think that was difficult for Hazard because all of a sudden against Celtic there was room, there was space for him to carry the ball, and also Celtic got tired, they were pressing high all game, there was space between their lines. Mallorca didn't have that as much until later in the game where, they broke down, and obviously Hazard was long gone by then. But I think that hurt Hazard a little bit, his performance. I also think you really miss Benzema moments like that because Benzema knows what to do in the box when it's tight. There's tight spaces. He knows how to link up with the other two. Whereas Hazard, I think maybe if he had Benzema there with him, or if Hazard played, this is the thing, Lucas. I think basically Hazard and Asensio are in the same. That I think if you want to get the best out of them, they probably should be in a diamond, where they don't have pressure to score and they don't have pressure to create, but they're just kind of floating around and providing outlets and keeping possession and keeping the ball flowing. But again, you can't just cater to that because this is not we're not talking about catering to Zinedine Zidane or Diego Maradona or even Isco in 16-17. You're catering to two players who are just not at their best and they're not what they used to be. So it's kind of this weird situation, man.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, they're similar in the sense that their weaknesses are similar and their style of play are similar. But it's true that at the end of the day, Asensio probably gives you a better chance to score if you need a goal than Hazard, at least off the bench. Yeah, I don't know if you need someone 20 minutes to go to the game and you look at the bench. I'd say that chances are that Asensio is a better scorer than Hazard for that kind of context. So I think Ancelotti will have to make a decision about these two in some time. I think that, again, as I said before, I think that Real Madrid are going to find themselves in this kind of situation sooner or later when they will need one goal to win the game, 15 minutes to go. And Ancelotti is going to have to trust either Hazard or Asensio, and it'll be interesting to see who he chooses.
I asked this to Matt yesterday. I'll ask it to you. Do you think the way Fede and Rodrygo are playing right now, it calms people down a little bit and the discussions of we should have signed someone on the right wing? I know you still feel strongly about it, but...
Yeah, probably for the most general fans and for the biggest percentage of fans around there and all that, it probably it decreases the concern level of them, given how brilliant Fede and Rodrigo have been lately. I still have my issues with mainly because of depth. I think that Real Madrid are going to be tested in terms of depth very soon. They are, in fact, going to be tested in the next few weeks. Lucas Vázquez is going to miss another game. We'll see what kind of a squad Ancelotti has available for the derby, but it doesn't look like he'll have plenty of options to choose from on the bench. The starting 11 might still look strong, even though they'll be without Benzema. But if something happens during the game, Ancelotti is going to have to make some tough decisions with his replacement. So even though I still have some concerns with the depth side of and perspective of it all, I think that for most general fans, the concern level has increased a little bit. Yeah,
I think Asensio, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, is going to play. Like, there's going to be a time where he's either going to have to play out of necessity, and he'll have to prove himself, but also, like, you know, we're not that deep. So I also don't think he's a bad player. Like, again, if he's your third choice right winger, that's not a terrible place to be as your club.
And if he's engaged, that's the issue.
Sure. I mean, but again, like, if he's like the 10 goals he scored last season, that was enough to just provide us with 10 goals and not being a primary player. That's solid. That's solid, you know.
That's very solid.
It would be good if, like, you know, half those goals didn't come against Mallorca or whatever in a game where we didn't need them as much and we could have used them maybe in a different game like PSG first leg then. But, you know, I kind of felt this way about Isco last season in that I didn't think Isco was that bad in his minutes to, like, never play him. And I kind of feel that way about Asensio now. And I also think there was another side of it with Isco is that because the club knew that he was leaving in the summertime, what incentive do you have to invest playing time in him over Camavinga, over whoever? And you know, I think Asensio will probably play more than Isco did last year only because we're a little bit more thin than we were in midfield with Isco in that situation. But
yeah, I agree. And by the way, I think that my main issue with what you say and what Ancelotti might decide if he actually plays Asensio is the attitude side of things. And I think this is something that might actually be, I don't know, maybe I'm making too big of a deal about something that wasn't that important. But I think that whole dressing room is kind of feeling that Asensio is not a part of him, you know, an active part of him. Did you see the play against Celtic when Rodrygo had a few options on a counter-attack and decided to finish the play himself? It wasn't a bad decision, but I felt like Asensio was open and probably should have. The easiest choice was probably to pass him the ball, and it was a pretty easy and obvious assist there. I don't know. I feel like if this was Vinicius or Benzema, Rodrigo would have passed the ball. But it was Asensio, and maybe, you know, the whole dressing room is feeling that Asensio is not putting the best work he can to be a part of them, you know, and they maybe feel like this guy is already wants out, so we should not fight for him as much as we fight for our other teammates. I'm not saying that, you know, they don't get along with it or anything like that, but, you know, this kind of sentiment sometimes happen in dressing rooms.
I do remember now that you mentioned also, even back in 2016, Ronaldo would get so frustrated with Asensio at times for not passing the ball and for shooting. Listen, if I were Asensio this summer, and obviously, look, everyone is free to decide whatever they want to do for their careers and what they think is best, and maybe it was a calculated decision that who knows might pay off for him. I don't think it will, because I think he's not going to get a huge signing bonus if he's not playing at all this season. No club is going to be like, oh yeah, you were great for the last 2 years. Here's your sign. No one's going to do that. And so I think it would have been to his benefit if he had just lowered his demands this summer and gone somewhere that would have paid him a little bit lower and also just played him regularly. Who knows? Maybe he would have had an amazing time somewhere, and I've actually even snuck into Lucho's World Cup squad if he did that. So now I think he's in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, mainly because Luis Enrique likes him a lot and seems to be willing to give him a chance whenever possible. So I think that Asensio would have received that chance, would have gotten that chance had he chose to play regularly really don't. It doesn't matter where. So I agree with you, but this is Jorge Mendes we're talking about, and this is what happens when you hire Jorge Mendes as your agent. There are other things and other factors that maybe matter more than minutes and chances at the World Cup.
I mean, like, it's not like Premier League teams. If you can stomach playing for a lower league, lower profile team in the Premier League and just get paid pretty good amount of money, but then start every game, if you can stomach that, that's in my opinion, a better situation. Like today, Wolves signed Diego Costa. I would rather have Asensio as a false nine than a 50-year-old Diego Costa, doing whatever he's going to do. I don't think he's going to do much at that age. He has, anyways.
Or even Guedes, they signed Guedes for a fortune this summer. So I think Asensio, as good as Guedes is, he isn't bad. I think Asensio is a more reliable player for a club like Wolverhampton, but obviously he feels like this is probably too big of a step back in his career to accept such offers. So if we're talking Premier League, he might only be considering the big clubs in the Premier League who are not willing to give him a spot in the starting 11. So
could you have pictured this man like in 2016 and 17 when Isco and Asensio were like the future?
It's crazy. It's
like,
crazy.
I cannot believe how this turned out for those two. Really can't.
Yeah,
Shocking.
Unfortunate. Yeah, unfortunate.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else you want to discuss today before we wrap it up?
No, let's talk for a few minutes about Rudiger. I thought he was solid. Obviously, very very good to see him contributing with that goal, even though it looked offside to me. I'm not gonna debate the whole thing against the VAR system and all that, but I still watch the replay and I don't understand how that goal isn't called offside. But anyway, here's to Rudiger. I think he'll be playing in the Atletico Madrid game. I like his contribution, so hopefully he'll keep this up and maybe actually wins some of his battles for the spot. I think he has a chance to win his spot during these games.
This is the lineup that I was most interested to see in the back line was Rudiger, Alba, Mendy, and those three together. And it looked good. The only thing that I would nitpick was there was like maybe two things that didn't go wrong, that went wrong, and it wasn't Rudiger's fault. And in fact, one of them was the goal where it should have been
Mendy, the goal.
Yeah, and it should have been Rudiger who was marking Muriqi is what I was going to say. So he messed up on that. And then there was the only other time I felt threatened, which was, I think, more to do with the fact that Cruz was the anchor at that moment and didn't track, was the throw-in. That I forget who it was from Mallorca who nearly scored him to make it 2-1. But yeah, this is the lineup I was most interested to see, and they did well. Rudiger has been, I would say, foot perfect. Apart from that very, very first pairing with Nacho and Almeria, and even then it was only one mistake, and the rest of that game he was great. Yeah. He's been as advertised, I would say.
Yeah, and the other thing that seems to be a thing for Ancelotti right now is that he realizes the fact that Alaba is a very offensive contributor than Mendy on the left back spot. So we're going to see, I think, many times when Real Madrid are struggling or need to find a goal, I think we're going to see Mendy out of the game and Alaba playing as left back quite sometimes, I think.
Any thoughts on the Leipzig game on Wednesday?
I'm just looking forward to seeing Nkunku play. I haven't watched a single minute of this guy. Everyone seems to be very hyped about his potential and all that, so looking forward to that and hopefully we have an entertaining game. I think they are supposed to be better than the performances they've put up this season, so hopefully they don't pick it up. They don't improve against Real Madrid.
Just came off a 3-0 win over Dortmund on the weekend. I think that was their first game after firing Tedesco. So, yeah, we'll see what version we get. There's always that we got them in bad timing because there's always the new manager effect. When someone new comes in, there's a quick boost in morale before they go back to being normal. So we caught them at the wrong time. But, hey, we're in good form. First Champions League game at the Bernabeu since the one you were at, Manchester City.
Yeah.
One of the greatest nights in club history. So we're back at it. All right,
then
Lucas.
the derby after, yeah.
And then the derby after, and then just goes crazy
Yeah,
for October.
Crazy. Exactly.
Yeah. It goes back to back to back to back. I think 2 games a week until the World Cup, something like that.
Yeah, barring the FIFA break, which is happening right after the derby. So yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine being in the Premier League situation right now, having to make up for games.
Crazy.
That I don't know how they're gonna figure that. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough.
It's gonna be very tough for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll be back. I think Matt and I are recording a podcast tomorrow night, and then Leipzig post-game show. That'll be exclusively for patrons over on patreon.com/managing Madrid. And I think you and I are going to do that together from Madrid after the game at some point. So make sure you're a patron to get access to that. Lucas, thanks for your time. It was fun. We'll chat Thursday. We'll be back on Thursday, you and I.
All right, Kiyan. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.